Hi everyone, this is a quick video, well actually it might be quite a long video, on how to create a main menu using Scaleform in cryengine. So I'll start by showing what it is that we're going to make. Right, so there's going to be a cutscene playing in the background. This cutscene is not really very appropriate for a kind of main menu, but you can obviously make whatever cutscene you want. The menu itself, I've just got one button in here, but you can, once you've done this, setting up a load of these buttons will be, really simple to do. It's just a case of copying and pasting some of the code. So the button, it's using the 3D elements of Scaleform, so you can see as I move the mouse cursor around the screen, the button's kind of moving to follow where the cursor is. So I know a lot of people have been asking for a tutorial on how to do that, so hopefully this'll cover that. And then after that, when you roll over the button, you get a little tooltip bit of text coming up telling you what the button does, so start a game. And when we click the button, it just drops us into the game. So you can easily set this up, rather than dropping you into this scene, you could easily set that up to load a new level. The reason that I've not done that is because that kind of functionality won't work in the editor. I'd have to kind of export this level and do all of that, so for this it's just easy for me to drop into the game. Okay, so let's have a look at the way this is set up in Flash. So the first part of this tutorial is going to be going through setting everything up in Flash, and then I'll probably record another video that's setting it up in cryengine. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that this is the Flash scene. If I preview this in the normal way that you would do in Flash, so hit Control Enter, or you can probably go to Publish Preview or something like that. Publish Preview. But yeah, Control Enter. This is how you would normally kind of have a look at your file. And what you will probably notice in here is that none of the 3D elements are working. And the reason that the 3D elements aren't working is because those 3D elements are part of Scaleform. So in order to see those working, I need to test using the Scaleform export. So in order to preview it in Scaleform, we can click the test button for Scaleform, and then you'll see all the elements working. Now, when you start up Flash, you won't have any of this Scaleform launcher stuff set up. As far as I know, it doesn't come installed with cryengine either, or rather the installation of it doesn't come with cryengine. So the way that I've got this working is basically by downloading UDK. So UDK does come with these tools, and if you download UDK, you can just follow the simple that's not what I wanted. Let me just find the web page. Okay, so if you go to this web page, udn.epicgames.com/3/setting up Scaleform GFX, then just follow this through. It's really easy to do, and then you'll have this little button for testing. So you kind of need this because it's a right pain to do this stuff if you can't just kind of click a button and test it. Right, so let's start setting up our Flash file. So if we go to a new Flash document, it needs to be ActionScript 2. I don't think cryengine supports, or the Scaleform version that cryengine uses, I don't think it supports ActionScript 3. So it needs to be ActionScript 2. the document will scale to the size of your screen in CryEngine. So in a sense the width and the height of it don't matter so much. Part of the kind of advantage of vector graphics is that they'll scale to the screen. But if we just make our scene 1280 by 720, oops, and make sure your frame rate set to 30 frames per second. Again, this isn't like massively important, it's just 30 frames per second is kind of standard for gaming stuff. So okay, and first thing to do will be to save this document. And so I've set up a new folder in my CryEngine. I just like to keep everything that I'm doing with CryEngine in this folder. So I've put it into the CryEngine folder and then into games, or into game rather, and then I've made a new folder called Flash, and I'll make a new folder in there called main menu and then give my file a name. Okay, so next thing to do is let's make a button. So for this we'll just use a rectangle. So just draw a rectangle out with the rectangle tool and select it. And what we need to do is turn this into a movie clip so that we can we basically need to do that so that we can access it in code. So if we right click on this and go to convert symbol, and we'll make it a movie clip. You can use buttons as well, but I think I prefer to use a movie clip for these. It gives you a bit more control. So once that's done, very important is to give it a name. So select it, and up here where it says instance name, we'll need a name for it so that we can refer to it in code, so that we can make it do things. So let's give this a name of well, let's call it start button. So this is going to be the start game button, start button. Okay, so now we can start adding some action script to our scene. So if we want to put our action script actually onto the frame, sort of main frame in this scene. So if we select that, so select this. These are the frames down here. So the only frame that's got anything on it at the moment is frame 1. So if we select that and right click on that and go to actions, we can start putting some code into this. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is to put in this line of code, _global.gfx extensions equals true. What this does is the 3D elements of Scaleform are not part of the basic classes in ActionScript. So this line of code essentially just pulls through those classes from the Scaleform extension, which it just means that we can make use of them. So once that's in, we can start to put in our code to move this button based on the mouse movement. So we've called it start button, so that's what we're going to need to be able to refer to it. So we'll put in start button and then a dot, and that means that dot then allows us to perform a operation on that start button. So the operation we want to perform is _y rotation. So this Y rotation, this is part of the Scaleform package. So if you don't bring in those extensions, then this action script's Flash won't know what to do with this Y rotation. So that's why we need to bring in that. That's why we need to put that first line in. So we want to rotate the start button based around the position of the mouse on the screen. So to get the position of the mouse on the screen, we'll use root._x mouse. So we're rotating around the y-axis based on the x position of the mouse. So once we've done that, we can just save that and test it. Right, okay, so that's the reason that isn't going to work at the moment is because when we load up Scaleform, the x position of the mouse is at 0. So the rotation on this is going to be at 0. What we need to do is we need to tell this that every time the mouse moves, we want this to update and look for the new position of the mouse, and then update the rotation of this based on that. So we need to create a function that will allow us to do that, and that function is onMouseMove. So just simply when the mouse gets moved, and then create a new function. So equals function. You need 2 brackets after that, and then we need to open some curly brackets. So everything in between these curly brackets is what's going to happen when the mouse moves. So within those curly brackets, let's put our what we want to happen. So whenever the mouse moves, we want it to update the Y rotation based on the movement, or based on the position of the mouse. So let's test that, and still not working. And the reason that's not working is because I've got a bracket backwards, because I'm stupid. There we go. So now that's updating based on the position of the mouse, but obviously this isn't really quite the functionality that we wanted. So what we need to do is just to kind of rationalize that movement. So the first thing that we can say is the left hand side of the screen is 0, the right hand side of the screen is going to be 1280. So the middle of the screen is going to be 640. So we want, when we're in the middle of the screen, we want the rotation to be 0. So straight away we can say that we want the right Y rotation to be the position of the mouse minus 640. So that means that when the mouse is at position 640, which is in the middle of the screen, the Y rotation will be 0. And then the next thing we want to do is, obviously the rotation is very extreme, so when the mouse is at the right hand side of the screen now, the rotation is going to be 640, but we want the rotation of this to be maybe about 15 or 20. We just want it to rotate about, so 15 or 20 degrees. So if we just divide this by a number, I found that 20 kind of gave me the movement that I wanted. But you can experiment with that. If you want it to move more extreme, then just make that number a bit smaller. If you want the movement to be more subtle, then make that number bigger. If we test that, we should be getting something a bit better now. So yeah, that's much better. There's a few problems with this. One of which is that the movement is going the wrong way, or going the wrong way from what I would want it to be. So when I move the mouse over to the right, I'd want this to tilt towards the mouse. When I move to the left, I'd want it to tilt to the left, and it's doing the opposite now. So if we just put a minus in front of that, then that'll swap those two positions around. So that's more kind of what I wanted it to do. And the other problem is that the point of rotation at the moment is this top left hand corner, and we want it to be the dead middle of that. So to fix that, this little cross that you can see here, that's the point at which it's rotating. So the easiest way to move the position of that is just to go into this symbol. So if we double click on this movie clip, we'll open it up, so you can see now we're in scene 1, symbol 1, rather than the root, which is scene 1. And then we can just move this now so that the cross is kind of in the middle. That's fine. Go back to our scene, and then we just need to move this back to the middle of the screen. And now it should rotate around the center. There we go. So now we just need to, we've done one rotation, let's do the other rotation. So X rotation based around the Y movement. Actually, we don't want that because that will be right. The reason we don't need the minus there is simply that Flash takes the 0 position as being like the top left, I think. So yeah, as the mouse goes down, it's just kind of opposite to when it goes side to side. Basically, it works this way round. So now, if we move the mouse cursor to the top of the screen, the button will kind of point up to face it. So it's as though it's looking at our cursor now, which is kind of what we wanted. And sorry, so this should be, because the screen is 720 high, this should be minus 360, not minus 640. That's better. So, okay, there we go. And I'll just make this a bit more extreme as well, so I'll make that a small number. And that looks good. Okay, so that's the functionality for doing all of the 3D stuff. Somebody might tell me that this is not the best way to set this up in Scaleform. I'm not a programmer, this is just kind of how I got it to work. So hopefully it's a reasonable way of doing it. If it's not, then let me know, and you know, be good to know the best way to do it. Okay, so let's put in the functionality for our button. So if we go into the button, the first thing we can do is we can put a new frame in. So let's just copy and paste this frame, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a different state for this for when your mouse is over it. So we'll have a mouse out and a mouse over state. So if we just put if you load up the action script for each frame and just put a stop in, all this stop does is it just means that when it gets to this frame it'll stop rather than playing the movie. If you don't have this, it'll just kind of, when you first load it up, it'll start cycling through these states. So you probably don't need a stop on the second frame actually, but you know, I just like to have the stops on there because I kind of know what it's doing then. So let's just put in some text for this button. So we'll call it start game. Let's position that over the top and give it make it black or whatever you want. Okay, that's fine. Actually, let's just delete this frame for now and then copy and paste this one in. So we've got the text. And then we'll just make the box blue for now. I'm sure you guys will want to do stuff that looks a lot kind of prettier than this, which will be cool, but I'm just doing it basic so it doesn't take very long. Okay, so those are our two states for the button. We just need to add the action script now to control those. So what we'll say is we want to control the start button, so start button, and then we want to control what happens to that start button when we roll over it. So the kind of key word for that is onRollOver. So start button.onRollOver, and then we want a new function to happen. So now everything that we put inside these curly brackets is what's going to happen when we roll over that start button. And all we want to do is we want to, when we roll over it, we just want to go to frame 2 of that movie clip. So start button.gotoAndStop on frame 2. And then we'll copy and paste that code, and then instead of roll over, we'll say on roll out. So when it's not rolled over, go back to frame 1. And that should do it for that. So there we go. When we roll over it, it goes to the second frame of that movie clip, and when we come off it, it goes back to frame 1. Okay, so let's just add like a tooltip to this as well, that will tell us what these buttons are going to do. So if you're creating a more advanced user interface, then this will be kind of, you know, quite useful for that. So what we want to do is to create a new text field. We want to make sure it's really important that this is set to dynamic text. Dynamic text means that it can be altered through code, essentially. So just draw out a text box. You don't need to put anything in that text box because we're gonna use code to say what should be in there. And then we need to give that text box a name so that we can access it through our code. So let's call it tooltip. So now in our code we can also say that when we roll over this button, let's do tooltip. So we want to access what's happening in that tooltip box .text. So this .text will say what text is in it. Then we can just say equals, and in quotation marks put something like start a new game. Close those quotation marks. So when we roll over it, the text is going to display that text, and when we come out of it, we want it to be empty again. So just put 2 quotation marks with nothing in between them, and check that in our Scaleform launcher. So that kind of works, but we've not got some of those fonts. Okay. So if we go to our tooltip text box and go to embed under character, and we'll just make sure that this is all embedded into our file. So just click on, well, let's just select uppercase, lowercase, numerals and punctuation. I would have thought that's everything we need. Click OK. Let's just try that now. Yeah, okay, so that's worked now. So you just need to make sure that your fonts are all embedded, and that's how you do it. So you just click embed fonts. So if I change this font to something else, then we'll need to embed that as well. Okay, that's almost set up in Flash. The only thing that we need to do now is that when we actually click this button, we want to tell cryengine to do something. So the way that we do that is we say, so start button again, because that's the thing that we're going to press, and this time we want to say on press. So when you actually press it, and that's going to be a new function. So now we can tell it what it's going to do when we actually press it. And what we want to put into here is fscommand command and then give this command a name. So this fs command, these are what we can access within cryengine. I think the only thing you can access within cryengine is an fs command. So anytime you want to tell cryengine to do anything, you need to put an fs command in. And it doesn't matter what we call this fs command. So what we put in these quotation marks, we just need to give it a name of some sort. So let's just give it a name of new game. So you might have another fs command, you might have another button in here that's like settings, so where you can change your controls and all that kind of stuff. In which case you'll pretty much just duplicate this button and then duplicate all of this code, and the fs command will be called settings or something like that. So I will need a semicolon at the end of that. Okay, that's all done. The last thing that we're going to do is we're just going to make a mouse pointer as well. So to make a mouse pointer, let's just create a new movie clip. So a little blue box will be fine for now. I'm not quite sure what on earth is happening there. Okay, I just had my 3D tool selected. So yeah, create a little box or something to use as a mouse cursor, and then just turn this into a movie clip and give it a name of mouse cursor. Again, it doesn't matter what you call this, just give it a name that makes sense. Okay, so we want to actually put code now onto this actual cursor. So if we right click on this little box cursor that we've made and we go to actions, we can put some action scripts onto that actual element, onto that movie clip. And the code we want to put in for this is on clip event, enter a frame in brackets, and then open up some curly brackets. I'll be honest with you, I don't really know what this does. This is just some code that I found ages ago for how to make this work, essentially. But yeah, it works anyway. And then we want to say the x position of this, so _x, which is the x position of this little square box we've made. And then we want to say that that equals this bit of code to get the x position of the mouse, so _root._x mouse. So let's copy and paste that and do the same for the y position, and that should be all the code that we need. So let's just test that, and you can see our little blue box is following our cursor now. Okay, so that's going to be the end of this tutorial. That's everything set up in Max. The next part will be putting this into CryEngine.